Welcome to E-Town, the show that keeps you up to date about the E-Town RC League. Each week, we will be discussing the outcome of the previous event, and we'll also talk about different aspects of the hobby. Now let the episode begin.
Now drop it to the flow, drop it to the flow then.
Hey everybody, my name is Hopper.
And my name is Buzz, and you're watching E-Town RC, the show that discusses everything radio control.
Today, we're going to be talking about how radio control came to be.
This episode is brought to you by Worth RC Videos. Worth RC Videos, because if a picture is worth 1,000 words, imagine what a video is worth.
Now, in order to define how the radio-controlled toy became a reality, you need to start with the science and inventions that built upon each other to create the technology.
And we'll start with how each of the major components were created.
First, let's take a look at how the battery came to be, and in order to do that we need to go all the way back to 1791 when a man named Alessandro Volta tested the effects of iron on the muscles of frogs to create the science for the first battery. But further research on electromagnetism and any practical use of electricity would require a source of continuous current, which was not available until 1800, when Volta invented the first electric pile, the forerunner of the modern battery. Then, in 1868, a Frenchman called Georges Leclanche invented the Leclanche cell. This was the origin of today's dry batteries, but it could be inconvenient to use as its ammonium chloride solution would spill over. So, in 1888, a German called Karl Gassner invented a battery where there was no risk of the solution spilling. Because the battery would not spill even though it contained a liquid, Gassner's invention became known as the dry cell or dry battery. Then, in 1899, Swedish engineer Waldemar Jungner invented the nickel-cadmium battery. This was an epoch-making battery and the origin of today's storage battery. 1 year later, in 1900, the great inventor Thomas Edison, who was also known to commercialize filament lamps, invented a nickel-iron storage battery. It is called the Edison battery. Alkaline manganese batteries were developed in 1941 to further enhance how we can harvest power. Although it wouldn't be until 50 years later when Sony would create the lithium-ion battery, which revolutionized stored power, and the ECD was born. Finally, in 1992, the mercury-free alkaline battery was introduced.
Next, we'll take a look at how remote controls came to be, and that journey starts in 1898 when Nikola Tesla featured a remote control torpedo in NYC. This is considered the very first radio-controlled toy from a device. His torpedo is still considered the first RC boat. Then, in 1903, Leonardo Torres Quevedo unleashed an RC robot. This is also the first instance of a remote. Now, we'll jump ahead 70 years when ultrasonic tones are used to transmit commands, giving us the base for the technology that we use today.
The third and final component is the radio, which starts in 1864 when it was shown, mathematically, that electronic waves could be sent via free space, and in 1885 Heinrich Hertz showed the world how to transmit signals via these electronic waves. This takes us back to 1903 when the first RC control is developed by Leonardo Torres Tolicno and used with his robot.
Now that you know how the pieces came together, let's go into the history of the actual cars and how they progressed into their modern-day forms. That journey began in 1966 when an Italian electronics company called Elettronica Giocattoli invented the first RC car, the Ferrari 250LM, which was nitro-powered a year after that. These cars were commercially produced by the British company, Mardave.
Then, in 1971 Team Associated, known as Associated, debuted its first vehicle, the RC1, which was a 1/8 scale nitro-powered on-road PAM car. 8 years later, Tamiya released the Sand Scorcher and Rough Rider 1-ton scale off-road electric kits, which kicked off what is often referred to as the golden era of RC.
In 1984, Team Associated, known then as Associated Electrics, introduced the RC-10 electric buggy that was built specifically with a focus on high performance. This began the shift from RC scale models to high-performance RC cars. 1 year later, the first IFMAR 1/10 scale electric off-road world championship took place in Pomona, California. Jay Halsey and Gil Losi, Jr. won stock and unlimited, respectively. This would mark the start of an era of electric off-road being the most popular segment in racing.
Let's move ahead another year to 1986 when Tamiya released the original Blackfoot, which launched a long run of monster trucks being the most popular bashers in RC. 3 years later, Team Associated released its RC-10L, putting the electric pan car era into full swing. Although it wouldn't last long, as Tamiya would come out with the TA1 and TA2 series of on-road cars that would take off in popularity, and the touring car racing segment rapidly grew and took over the hobby. In the midst of the touring craze, HPAR released the RS4 Mini, which is credited for starting a huge mini and micro trend.
In 1999, Traxxas introduced the T-Max nitro-powered, ready-to-run monster truck that shifted the hobby from kits to ready-to-runs.
There wouldn't be another major change to the hobby until nearly half a decade later when rock crawling would become more mainstream and Jason Hansel would launch RC Crawler, a website dedicated to the fast-growing segment. Then, 3 years later, in 2007, Axial would release the AX-10 Scorpion rock crawler kit that would make it easy for anyone to build a vehicle capable of rock crawling, and the segment would virtually explode.
The last major change to the hobby happened a year later when Traxxas introduced the Slash 2WD short course truck that would kick off the short course era, and while the return to scale arguably started with rock crawling, the hobby has truly come full circle with short course trucks that look like the full-size race trucks competing in TORC and LOORS.
Well, that's it for today's episode of E-Town. Thanks for watching, and next week, we'll have a special guest star and talk about the history of E-Town RC.